Good afternoon to everyone. So before I start, let me just ask a question from the audience, right? Who's here who believes, right? And just a show of hands, right? And some of you might ask a question, believe in what, right? And I actually mean like network automation, right? Because that's what I'm here to talk about. So show of hands, who believes in network automation? That's what we need. Great. So it's a good room. I'm already preaching to the converted, so that's good. But question is, have you guys read the small print, right? In terms of, how do we actually go ahead and what is the future lies ahead of us? So, just to kind of like continue on that momentum, I just want to make sure that you guys, instead of just going down that road of being involved, you just need to be involved. Basically, that's the idea. So, and if what I'm going to cover today is just, if you're involved in this process of network automation, you should be all right, because that's the whole point. So. The introduction that I want to kind of like start off with is really about what is the current state of network automation, right? How do we manage the differences between our the intent and the actual reality, so the of your network itself, and then we're going to go and talk about a little bit about in detail about the data itself and why is it important, why is the data-driven approach is important within network automation, and in the end we just look at Nautobot, right? Because at the end of the day, I am a network to code employee, but I'm here to talk about really just the industry and network automation itself as a future kind of like move. But let's look at the current state of the network management, right? And as what we've seen in the industry is that as we move away from a CLI, manual-driven methodologies, and we go and progress into environments that are more complex, environments that are taken a little bit more in terms of where it becomes complex, you actually need a lot more operational elements. So people tend to start writing scripts in Perl and Python. You start writing batch scripts and start using departmentalized power tools, right? And and as we become more and more in control of our network, this is how we actually start achieving automation. But as we go on that journey, and in fact, to achieve network automation, we need to think about one important bit there is the source of truth, right? So that's the bit in the middle there, right? So, and of course, as we continue further down that journey of creating automation architecture, we start introducing ITSM or self-service platforms, and then we go down this journey of creating highly automated and high resilient infrastructures. But what I'm going to try and focus today on is the source of truth element, and this is really a key fundamental aspect, because before we actually proceed down that road, we want to make sure that we do have a source of truth, because it's the fundamental piece to achieve network automation. Now, where do we start, right? So how do we actually go down that road? And as I mentioned before, source of truth is the actual key component here. And we can't really move forward, right, unless we start to see the power of that data. And what is data, right? So traditionally we see data as documentation, right? So we see we don't generally speak about this as data that drives change, but in fact it is. So what's happening is that the notion here is that we stop thinking of data as documentation, we change the data first, and then we change, and that with this change drives and flows into your network environment. And this is the kind of like concept where we need to kind of like change our our ways of thinking. So therefore, so far, we don't think of data as documentation, but we think that as data that we drive change, right? So, and this is really the paradigm shift that we require to unlock the potentials of network automation, right? So, now we need to understand a little bit about the source of truth, right? Right, intent versus reality, and what do we actually mean by that? So, what we're doing with intent is we express our intent into a source of truth, and that is what is the trusted part of the network and what is the actual trusted state of our environment, right? And this is as I mentioned, it's a slightly different way of the way we think, particularly in network engineering, in our network engineering world. So we generally think that, if we want to, look at the trusted and the accurate state of the network, we actually go and look at the network itself, this is the traditional way of thinking. But it's, if we start thinking about that, using source of truth, right, as the authoritative state of that environment, and then reflecting that onto your network, you're actually, already thinking down along the lines of, future network automation. And whenever we treat, obviously, the other way around, is that if the environment is your authoritative state, and then, reflect that back into your source of truth, it doesn't really end up working, because you're reflecting something that's existing on the environment. So you're basically going to be unable to maintain an accurate state of the network. So it is inevitable, right, so that you have a source of truth, and that is our intent, and that is reflected on our network, right? So, and this is kind of like the crucial element in terms of achieving network automation. So, let's look at some examples. So this is like an example of a configuration of a switch, right? On the right, we see the expected state of the environment, and we can see all of these pieces of data here in the orange piece, right? And so the specific syntax for the vendor, right? So then you have got the specific configuration commands versus the actual data itself. So the data is the pieces in orange and the configuration syntax in black. And what we're changing is the data piece on the right? The pieces of orange here. And then what we typically see is the most change occurring is in this environment, in the actual data itself. Because in some ways we need to be also vendor independent, right? So we want to make sure that when we look at a configuration like this, we're really interested in the actual data itself, not necessarily the actual syntax. Obviously, the syntax is important, but as we go along, in terms of reflecting what you want to achieve in your network environment, the data is more important. Now. So in terms of how we express our intended states, it goes down the journey of moving our concepts of moving away from this CLI to a more data-driven network automation type environment. So what we're trying to do is decouple the expressed CLI state versus the actual state itself and what we're actually trying to achieve, right? So the design of the intent and what we're expressing into that CLI. The key being here is that we are trying to decouple these things. Traditionally, we have a kind of, merge these two concepts, the CLI syntax and the actual data itself. So we think of the CLI as an intent, as the same thing, but they're really, really not, right? So the CLI is just a method by which we achieve our intent. So now, looking at the intent versus reality, so the intent is the desired state of the network. This is where, obviously our product Nautobot, various other services now, CMDB tools or YAML elements are representing that. But versus the discovered state, right, with technologies, various different ITSM technologies like IP Fabric, SolarWinds, Grafana, and ServiceNow. And so there are really two different pieces are here, right? One is to go and confirm what we have out there in our network, and the other is what are we trying to achieve? What is our intent? What is the intended state of the network that we are trying to get? So we need to keep these in mind because these are two different things, right? And sometimes we tend to mix these things together. And again, to achieve real network automation, we need to make sure that we kind of like aware of the differences between these. Now, what I'm going to talk about is Nautobot, right? In terms of the platform itself that is a source of truth as well as a network automation platform. And these are the two key components of it. And it's this is not just about Nautobot or the source of truth itself, but how we actually create and use that source of truth, how we actually drive that change, and we integrate that data into the actual environment itself. So just a bit about Nautobot. So Nautobot is a open source technology that is a community project sponsored by Network to Code, our organization. We started this in 2021, and its purpose is to drive network automation into the network ecosystems. Now, the elements of it, I mean, for example, is just to talk about some of the use cases that we have in Nautobot. So we have one of them is network source of truth, right? So here you actually see we can display your network environment in terms of devices, IP addresses, VLANs, and then you could see the information using traditional ITSM tools like CMDB or IPAM or basically data center infrastructure management tools as well. And the aim is that we have a single source of truth, right, that is capable of modeling all these different components in one place. So things like user-defined relationships, right, custom fields, data validation, or Git repository, or as a data source. But the aim is for Nautobot is to give you the flexibility to take this framework and to make sure that you're basically it is the representation of your environment, because every environment is just a little bit different, right? And it's a common problem with the sources of truth is that they're often not flexible enough to be able to adapt to the how businesses do and they operate. So, and the key component is the network automation platform apps, so that comes on top of the actual Nautobot environment. Now, these are part of the basically network, the Nautobot community. So we have the ability for the community to build and add additional components. And you also have the ability to write your own code. You have the ability to add your own scripts and run your own power tools, and also at the same time gives you the ability to consolidate all these different elements. So of course we fully support REST APIs, GraphQL endpoints, webhooks, Git integration, and further applications that can be developed on to plug in. So in other words, Nautobot really focuses on the intended and the desired state, right? It basically unifies disparate data sources, creating that single source of truth. So, and it also exposes all intended state data, right? And systems throughout the REST and the GraphQL APIs. And at the end, apps are used to tailor the design and build this integration with external systems. So external systems that are often used for orchestration and execution and telemetry. Now, looking at the Nautobot in a bit deeper level. So we're talking about extensibility features. So for example, if you have things about where you want to change, for example, say you've got a device that is sitting on a shelf and you need to set a status on it. So if there's a cold spare on a shelf, maybe we're doing major renovations and we need to be planning devices in advance. So what you could do is you can actually set statuses on these devices. You can add tags, really powerful and flexible in terms of managing these databases. things like dynamic groups, right? Really flexible concepts here that we have in the platform, allowing you to group things based on high-level abstraction layers. And things like context configs, jobs, custom fields, right? All giving you a lot of flexibility in order to, so you can extend the actual platform itself. So there is very little limitations as to what you can do so far with it. And just coming back to, you know, Nautobot or how we actually populate Nautobot for you to be able to use it. So how do you start? So how do we get the data into Nautobot itself? And once we actually deployed it. So we got to, you know, and obviously we want to make sure, as I mentioned, is that we reflect the actual Nautobot itself and the data models that are in there are reflective of our environment, right? So but obviously there's nothing there initially, so we have to start from somewhere. So, and if it's all possible, we want to avoid any manual data entry. So there was obviously several methods by it. One of them is through data synchronization and normalization. I mean, this is like your data aggregation methods. Then we also have the ability to pull or push data from external tools like Infoblox, Arista, ServiceNow, Device45, ITP Fabric. The list can go on. So really, in terms of any other, you know, third-party elements, these tools we can push and pull data from. But the aim is to obviously, you know, reduce as much of this manual interaction. And we understand that, you know, sometimes we obviously go down the road where we have to do some networking imports, right? So, for example, if you've got an existing network in there and you want to reflect that, you want to see the state of that. So initially, at the very first stage, yeah, let's do that. But we want to make sure that we want to advise you that do this as a one-time off. So when you're actually reflecting your existing network back into Nautobot, because don't forget, the single source of truth is all about reflecting the intended state of the network rather than what's the actual state that is in there, right? And but obviously for those organizations that want to have manual population, we have an onboarding app for that as well, so people actually can go and start populating the source of truth through that or Nautobot environment. Now, once we get, we create this environment, we want to make sure that we want to reduce that blast radius, right? So we want to make sure that data is valid, right? And the way we do that is through data validation engine. So there's two ways: data validation engine, and it's also through user-defined jobs, right? So what we actually allow is users to go in there and create and validate that data both before and after the change, because we want to make sure that, you know, what we're doing is we ensuring that data is fitting the model. And that data is good, and it's part of the data integration, the data integrity that we provide. Now, talking about integrating and using Nautobot, right? So, what I wanted to kind of like just give you a high-level overview here is really about the applications itself, right? So, as I mentioned, we're a Nautobot is a free tool to use, right? It's, as I mentioned, it's an open standards tool. So people out in the industry and the community is driving and developing the applications themselves. But we also, at Network to Code, we also develop these tools. And today we have over 25 different apps. Some of you who have access to this, you can actually click on the website or go into that QR code. It will take you to this app ecosystem, right, that we as an organization have developed. And currently, as I said, we have 25 apps available in this project. And some of the most popular ones are circuit maintenance, right? So you can actually manage your circuit environments, this golden configuration, obviously making sure that you your compliance, you can govern and the actual configuration compliance in your network. Data validation, device onboarding, device lifecycle management, right? So if you want to make sure that all these devices have the latest softwares and updated on them, and also the single source of truth that I talked about, right? These are all applications that you can start off and start using day one in Nautobot because it's all available there. So I encourage you to go out there, and if you haven't used Nautobot before, to go out and try it. It's very simple to install. It's just about half an hour. And obviously all these tools or all these applications are available there, so for you to use. So feel free to get on board. And as I mentioned, we're a network to code. We don't sell this tool, so this is not something that we sell. What we here as an organization is to help people when they fall into these traps of network automation. And if you need any help, this is what Network to Code does. We're a professional services organization. And again, this is the QR code for the applications. But this is really just a QR code for my details. I know this is the future, I guess, then where anyone who's got access to mobile phone can take a picture and get it. But as an organization, as I said, what we hear is not to sell you a tool, but to sell the services. So with that, I'm kind of like finished with my presentation. And if anyone's got any questions about Nautobot or Network to Code as what we do, I'm more than happy to answer.
Hello.
Hi, Dan.
So I'm a long-time user of a product called NetBox, which I understand Nautobot is actually a fork of in 2021.
Correct.
So could you tell me, as a NetBox user, what could I expect to find in Nautobot that I don't have in NetBox today?
Okay. So in terms of the competitive overviews, I'm not going to go and dive into too much in terms of where we're better and where we're not, because I'm not ready to kind of like create that battle. But what I can say is that there's a lot of features in Nautobot that we cover in NetBox, but the ability to, and if you decide to go with Nautobot later on, we can actually go and ingest all that data and transfer all that environment into Nautobot. Now, in terms of capabilities, obviously we are a enterprise class. We basically provide enterprise class services in terms of the support, and we see Nautobot as a enterprise class tool, both used in enterprise environments, service provider, and carrier space as well. So I hope that answers your question. I know there's a lot of features and a lot of elements. It's not a very, I don't know, I wouldn't want to go and compare two different products here. But thank you.
That's Simon's question as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. That's good. All right.
All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, then thank you very much indeed. And I will come up to the microphone and do what's next.
Thank you.